The 2025 NFL Combine has just finished, and this is every player that the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with informally and formally at the Combine that we know of. So, before I get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also like this video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, the NFL Combine was held from Thursday, February 27th to Sunday, March 2nd. So it has officially finished. All the testing has been done. All the interviews have been done. And the Pittsburgh Steelers and every other team in the NFL is allowed to meet formally with 45 players. They aren't allowed to exceed that number. So they really have to put a list together and be careful on which players they're meeting with formally. What does formally mean? Well, over dinner or just in an actual interview setting. So the Pittsburgh Steelers and every other team are also allowed to meet informally with way more players, which means just a casual talk and casual interview, like nothing too fancy. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, in terms of who they met with during the Combine week, it was kept track of between some insiders from the Pittsburgh Steelers and just outside resources. So I'm going to go through the numbers of the players that the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with informally and formally, and who those players are individually by name. So the number of known Steelers formal interview meetings so far is 30 out of the 45. So as this updates and as we know more players, I'll keep you updated. But as of right now, so far we know 30 formal meetings. And the number of known Steelers informal meetings so far is 37. So looking at all the interviews the Steelers done with these individual players, I'm going to go position by position and name the names the Steelers have met with and tell you if it's informal or formal. So if I'm listing off the players and I don't list informal or formal, just take it as a formal interview. But if I say informal, then it's informal. So let's start off with the quarterback position. The Pittsburgh Steelers have met with Quinn Myers of Texas. They met with Jackson Dart of Ole Miss. They've met with Will Heyward of Ohio State. And informally, they met with Max Brosmer of Minnesota. So in total, the Pittsburgh Steelers that we know of met with 4 quarterbacks. Looking at the running back position, the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with Ashton Jeanty of Boise State. They met with Ollie Gordon II of Oklahoma State. They met with Jordan James of Oregon. They met with Caleb Johnson of Iowa. They met with DJ Giddens of Kansas State. They met with Quinston Judkins from Ohio State. They met with Jaden Blue of Texas. They met with Trayvon Henderson of Ohio State. They met with Omarion Hampton of North Carolina. This one is unclear if it's formal or formal. They also met with Dylan Sampson of Tennessee, which was an informal interview. They met with Kyle Morgangi from Rutgers, which was an informal interview as well. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they met with a lot of running backs, and in total, they met with around, I believe, 12 it was. 11 or 12, if I'm counting it right. So you look at wide receiver position now. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they met with wide receiver Alik Anamor from Stanford. They met with Matthew Golden of Texas. They met with Minkah from Ohio State. They met with Trey Harris from Ole Miss. They met with Torrey Horton from Colorado State. They met with Holden from Oregon. This one's unclear if it's formal or informal. They also met with Williams of TSU, which was an informal interview. They met with Jordan Watkins of Ole Miss, informal interview. They met with Xavier from Miami, which was an informal interview. They met with Ricky White III from UNLV, which was an informal interview. They met with Andrew Armstrong of Arkansas, informally. They met with Jack Beck from TSU, informally. So, in total, they have met with 12 wide receivers at the Combine, informally. Now, moving over to the tight end position, the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with Tyler Warren of Penn State. They met with Bryson Nebzit from North Carolina, informally. They also met with Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech informally. They met with Mitchell Evans of Notre Dame informally. They also met with Gavin from Pitt informally and Jack Bringingstool of Clemson informally. So, in total, the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with 6 tight ends in total. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, now looking at offensive line and who they met with at the Combine, they met with Charles Grant, William and Mary, and they also met with Jalen Rivers of Miami informally. They met with Gray Zabil from North Dakota State informally. They met with Jalen Travis of Iowa informally. They met with Tate from Georgia informally. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they meet with a total of 5 tight ends. Now, looking at defensive line that the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with at the Combine, they met with Vernon from Texas, Alfred Collins from Texas, Kenneth Grant from Michigan, Shamir Turner from Texas A&M, Derek Harmon from Oregon, Warren Brinson from Georgia informally, J.J. Pegas from Ole Miss informally, Elijah Roberts from SMU informally, C.J. West from Indiana informally, Fred Stokes Jr. from a defensive end from Prairie View A&M informally. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they meet with a decent amount of defensive linemen, and in total, I believe it was 10 of them, 10 defensive linemen. Now, looking at the edge position, the Pittsburgh Steelers meet with a total of 5 edges. Jordan Birch from Oregon, Fadil Diggs from Syracuse informally, Tyler Barron from Miami informally, Ahmad from Boise State informally, Antoine Powell Ryland from Virginia Tech informally. Now, moving over to the linebacker position, the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma, Carson Bruner from Washington informally, Cody Lindenberg from Minnesota informally, Chris Paul from Ole Miss informally, Cody Simon from Ohio State informally, Jeffrey Baza from Oregon informally. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they meet with a decent amount of inside and outside linebackers as well. They meet with a total of 6 of them. Now, moving over to the defensive back position, in terms of cornerbacks, the Pittsburgh Steelers meet with 6 cornerbacks, and those cornerbacks are J.D. Barron from Texas, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, Will Johnson from Michigan, Zy Alexander from LSU informally, Jacob Parrish from Kansas State informally, Upton Stout from Western Kentucky informally. But at the safety position, they meet with 4 defensive back safeties, Jalen Reed from Penn State, Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, R.J. Mickens from Clemson informally, and Malik Verdon from Iowa State informally. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, those are every player that they've met with at the NFL Combine, informally or formally, at each position. So it says a lot on which positions they're targeting, and based off who they're interviewing, you could look at which rounds they're probably going to look at these position groups. Just to kind of recap this from my perspective, Omar Khan has come out and said the defensive line, running back, and kind of the playmakers are the top position groups of this NFL draft class, and you could see it based off the interviews that some of the top formal interviews that the Steelers have done were mainly with the running backs, defensive line, and wide receivers. So you could look at those position groups as maybe a place where the Pittsburgh Steelers target early in this year's NFL draft, especially because most of those guys are formal interviews. The informal interviews, you could look at it and say, hey, those guys are probably going to be the mid-round draft class, maybe the 4th and beyond rounds that the Pittsburgh Steelers look at. But there's going to be some top targets the Pittsburgh Steelers will be looking at closer when it actually comes to their pro day. There's more of opportunity to meet with them and one-on-one things like that at the pro day. So the Pittsburgh Steelers can be expected to meet with more players at that time. But just all in all, some of these players that weren't on these lists were probably already met with at the Senior Bowl, so you have to take that into account as well. But these are the players that the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with at the NFL Combine this season, formally and informally, and when this gets updated and the other players are revealed and they're announced, I'll be sure to update you on them. So, with that being said, that's the end of this video. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on this kind of video of these players the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with. And is there anything interesting you want to add on in terms of the position groups the Steelers are looking at more in terms of the highest number of interviews, formally and informally? And which position groups do you want the Steelers to target early in this year's draft? If you want to give me your mock draft as well, let me know down in the comments below. Also, like I said at the beginning of this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis reports, everything surrounding this Pittsburgh Steelers team this offseason. I'm covering it, and the whole draft process, whether it was the Senior Bowl, the Combine, I already covered it, so there's videos on the channel about that, but also pro days and the people the Steelers will meet with there, along with the free agency process that's coming up shortly, and just everything in general this offseason. I'm covering it, so make sure you stay tuned to this channel, like, comment, and subscribe for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, and until the next video, I'll see you guys all later. I'm out. Peace.